shi pa thiab Hallelujah Nu tư cho ki shi pa thiab Hallelujah
cho nên là cho vào thì có một cái chỉ thản hơn rồi cho từ thu gia la và tổ thu mình cả là một nhau nhau là tên này là tuần chỉ là nó chỉ cho cái tin bóng là cái cho tôi muốn chỉ cho tổ thu là thế cũng mỗi cái tôi tin bóng tôi muốn cho vào bên kia thì cái này là trong một cái tổ đấy ít kia phải mùng chi thì trả lại tiền cái đầu
แต่นายเป็นตัวจนได้สักหัวเสียแต่เขาเป็นตัวจนสักหัวเสียในหน่วยอย่างอีกของปีสอดทูในการคือมันยอดจบไปเฉลี่ยนะจากการลงเป็นตัวในหน่วยอย่างเป็นตัวถามจบจะให้แม่ไว้ไปเฉลี่ยนะใช่อย่างปีดีจังสารมออย่างยอดจบไปเฉลี่ยนะcái 13 môngคือใช้จีนแล้วคือไปจากเมืองเวียดนามก็นำđại sứ quán Việt Nam là sau tận thu Việt Nam bao gồm tại cho Tây Mỹ thì nhau chọn từ từ Việt Nam một cái chính sách chuyên xây dựng một cái chính anh đây lúc sau là cái tăng tạo xây cho hắn đây lúc sáng thang nó cái top là đại sứ quán Việt Nam là sự sau tận thu Việt Nam hiện nay cho hắn đây có tiền nhau chọn mấy cả tên mà nhau chọn từ Tây thì nhau là chọn cả luôn nên đây lúc họ cáiตัวhắn này giờ bây sángตัวขาดrồi bây giờ mong là sự bây giờตัวnày nhau chọn để đầu tư cho Việt Nam với nhau để chào họ chuyển chế bây giờ choตัวnày cái hồng bộ quốc gia là sự bộ quốc cứ nhau hướng tới bây giờ lúcตัวnày long tới chào ở cho bên này tôi nhớ cho cái đâu cái đó thằng này giờ họ cứ chuyển chế hay lúc nào bâyตัวhắn này giờ bây sáng của họ sát tận thu cứ nhau chọn tới cho Mỹ cả nhau chọn Việt Nam là của quốc bao giờ cho Tây Mỹ mua hắn này cho bây giờ mong giờ về đến tại bên xa tôi hắn này nó tốt là tận đây là cái Mỹ áp của tại sao tận thu Mỹ cả nhau chọn Việt Nam Hà Nội là một hai trả lương là bên sinh ha bây giờ mới trả lương nộp cho sát tận thu Việt Nam sẽ có quốc bao cả đóพวกมึงจะติดทีเนี่ยพวกหาปนน้อยจะสูงนะโอ้ยอย่างพวกน้อยนะพวกหายเลยจะเต็มไม่นำไปจากจะต้องติดเขาเนี่ยเขาเป็นมาเป็นตัวตัวใช่ไหมนะแต่ว่าจอนเราจะมีชุดเดิมจะเป็นตัวไทยตัวนี้
We're here. I want to welcome you, but also Ambassador Crittenbrink to San Jose, and to thank everyone. Here about the Vietnamese community for attending, and I also want to recognize Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, my dear friend in Congress. Now, in a minute, we'll hear from the ambassador on some comments that he has. But I want to take this opportunity to share again with you the concerns as we see the Vietnamese government eager to establish deeper economic and military ties with the United States. Over recent years, the human rights situation in Vietnam has actually worsened. As chair of the Congressional Caucus on Vietnam, I work with many of my colleagues to condemn the government's human rights violations, urging them to protect basic liberties for their citizens, and we've also called on the Trump administration to push for these changes. Now, earlier this month, I sent a letter with other members of the Vietnam Caucus to the Vietnamese Prime Minister, asking that they end the crackdown on human rights activists and to release all prisoners of conscience. As we know, freedom of expression has become even more hindered with new cybersecurity laws going into effect, requiring online businesses, including Facebook and Google, to store their data inside Vietnam so that the user information could be turned over to the government. The law on belief and religion in Vietnam continues to allow for the persecution of religious minorities. And once again, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has called on the State Department to designate Vietnam as a country of particular concern in its most recent report. We've also seen unwarranted government land grabs that lead to forced evictions and demolitions, especially of vulnerable communities. I have urged, along with others, to ask the Trump administration to investigate this further and to protect human rights. And of course, we've once again introduced the Vietnam Human Rights Act. Now, I'll introduce Ambassador Crittenbrink and just Ambassador Crittenbrink. You know, as Anna, as you mentioned, I have some disagreements with the Trump administration. I wish that they would have their State Department designate Vietnam a country of particular concern because of their violation of religious freedom. I wish that they, as a government, would press Vietnam to improve its human rights record. I wish that they would stop deporting people who've lived as legal residents of the United States for decades for some minor offense 25 or 30 years ago. That's not right. Having said that, Ambassador Crittenbrink is a career civil servant. He has been in the State Department for 26 years, almost all of it in Asia, and career civil servants have a policy of not criticizing whichever president they serve under. They don't set the policy of the United States government. They implement whatever policy that is. I will say that Ambassador Crittenbrink has been very responsive to me. Last year, an American citizen from my district was arrested by the Vietnamese, and I got on the phone, and Ambassador Crittenbrink answered my phone call, and he gave me his personal email address, and then he went to bat, and we made sure that that American citizen was released, and I'm grateful to him. He is here just to say a few things, and then I think he primarily wants to listen to what you have to say, that he can incorporate in his heart. So with that, please join me in welcoming Ambassador Dan Crittenbrink.
Well, good afternoon. I am so excited to be here in San Jose. It's an honor to see all of you, and I appreciate your taking time out of your busy day to spend time with me here. I particularly want to thank Representatives Lofgren and Hmoob for organizing and co-hosting this forum. It's a tremendous honor for me to be here. As Representative Lofgren mentioned a moment ago, my objective here today is very simple. I want to pay my respects to, I want to tell you how grateful I am to the Vietnamese American community, all 2 million strong, for the tremendous and invaluable contributions you've made to the development of our great country. I thank you for that. I thank you as well for your perspectives on our relationship today with Vietnam. I hope to learn from you. I hope to get your suggestions. I hope to hear your concerns so that I can better represent our country's interests and your interests as well as I engage with the government and the leaders of Vietnam on a daily basis. I have had the privilege of serving as America's ambassador to Vietnam since November of 2017. It's taken me a couple of years to finally be able to come here to California and to have an opportunity to meet here. I had planned to come last January. Some of you may recall when the U.S. government shut down at the time prevented us from holding this event, but I'm really honored to be here today. I wanted to make some brief comments at the top about what we're trying to achieve in our relationship with Vietnam today. This year marks the 25th anniversary of our bilateral relationship with Vietnam. I feel tremendously privileged to serve as your ambassador in Vietnam. We've come a long way together in the past 25 years by facing squarely historical issues and the legacy of war and its impact on our people. And today I'm happy to report that in areas as diverse as trade, development, education, healthcare, energy, and security, the United States and Vietnam are working together with a shared commitment to peace and prosperity. Maybe the simplest way I can begin to explain what we're trying to achieve in Vietnam is to share with you the mission statement of the U.S. Mission in Vietnam. We have nearly 1,000 employees in U.S. Mission Vietnam at our embassy in Hanoi and our consulate general in Ho Chi Minh City, more than 200 Americans and more than 700 local staff. And our mission statement is that we are there to support the development of a strong, prosperous, and independent Vietnam that contributes to international security, engages in free, fair, and reciprocal trade, and respects human rights and the rule of law. And I think if you focus on that mission statement, you can see very clearly what we're there to do. It is in America's national interest to see Vietnam to succeed, to see a strong, prosperous, and independent Vietnam. But we want that Vietnam then to be our partner in advancing our shared interests related to security, to economics and trade, and of course, human rights and the rule of law as well. Speaking specifically of trade, our relationship has grown exponentially. 25 years ago, our countries had almost zero trade. Today, the United States and Vietnam conduct almost $78 billion in annual bilateral trade, even though the United States continues to run a substantial and growing trade deficit with Vietnam. So we're committed to achieving free, fair, and reciprocal trade and investment with Vietnam by reducing barriers to American companies. But we're also focused on seizing the incredible opportunities that Vietnam's growth presents in sectors ranging from energy and healthcare to transportation and infrastructure. There are opportunities there that benefit both of our countries. Vietnam, despite the trade deficit, is one of America's fastest growing export markets. More and more U.S. companies are working with Vietnamese companies. I believe that our economic futures are linked. On humanitarian and war legacy issues, I think Representative Eshu spoke eloquently to the importance of that work and the impact it's had on our bilateral relationship. I believe that our work on humanitarian and legacy of war issues has done more than perhaps any other single issue to build trust and goodwill between our two countries. We continue our close cooperation with Vietnam to account for our missing personnel. There remain 1,246 missing Americans from the war. But through close cooperation on a daily basis with the government of Vietnam over the last nearly 3 decades, we've accounted for more than 700 Americans, and that important work continues and will continue until we account for every missing American from the war. We're also working to clean up dioxin from Agent Orange, remove landmines and unexploded ordnance, and assist Vietnamese people with disabilities. For example, in November of 2018, I had the privilege of participating in a ceremony celebrating the completion of our work at the Da Nang International Airport to clean up dioxin or Agent Orange contamination there in a project in which the U.S. invested more than $110 million. Last April, I participated in a ceremony in which we launched similar cleanup efforts at the Bien Hoa Air Base outside of Ho Chi Minh City in an even larger project. And I think these projects, they remove a health threat to the Vietnamese public. They open up new areas and new land for use, and I do think they help build trust between our two great countries. Regarding unexploded ordnance, the United States has also invested significantly since 1993, more than $100 million to clear unexploded ordnance, particularly in the province of Guangxi. In my last trip to Guangxi province last year, I was told by officials there that just a decade ago, every year, more than 70 people, more than 70 Vietnamese people were killed and injured every year from unexploded ordnance. Happy to report today that in the last 2 years there have been 0 accidents, 0 deaths, and that's explicitly linked to the unexploded ordnance work funded by the U.S. government. It's having a great impact, positive impact on the daily life of Vietnamese citizens. And as I mentioned, our work in treating Vietnamese with disabilities to improve their lives goes on as well. Our security ties are growing and have become one of the most important parts of our relationship as well. We are conducting a number of activities to build Vietnam's defense capacity, particularly the capacity of the Vietnamese Coast Guard, so that Vietnam can understand and defend its maritime interests in the face of growing challenges in the region. And together we're working on common challenges, both in the South China Sea and more broadly on issues related to North Korea. Our people-to-people ties grow stronger every day. Today, nearly 30,000 young Vietnamese are studying in the United States. As I tell my friends in Vietnam, every year we're creating 30,000 new goodwill ambassadors for the U.S. Vietnam partnership. I know that these young Vietnamese students will return to Vietnam with a world-class education, and they'll contribute to a thriving economy in Vietnam and to the growth of the U.S. Vietnam partnership. I'm also happy to report that the United States of America is incredibly popular in Vietnam. We have a 96% favorability rating in Vietnam today, and I think it shows again the strength of the growing people-to-people ties between our two countries. So I think the progress that we've made in the U.S.-Vietnam relationship over the past 25 years has been nothing less than extraordinary. There are, of course, significant challenges as well. Even though I'm optimistic about the future of the U.S.-Vietnam partnership, I also recognize that we face some significant challenges. Those challenges can only be addressed through honest, open, and candid dialogue. I think the most significant challenge that I'd like to mention here today is human rights and religious freedom. I can commit to you that for the U.S. government, for the Trump administration, for the U.S. mission to Vietnam, human rights and religious freedom will remain a fundamental, central element of our foreign policy. It will be a fundamental central element of my engagement going forward. I think the picture in Vietnam is decidedly mixed when it comes to human rights and religious freedom. The trend over the past 4 years of increased arrests, convictions, and harsh sentences of peaceful activists is deeply troubling. Aside from our annual human rights dialogue, which will convene this year for the 24th time, I routinely raise our concerns in my meetings with Vietnam's top leaders. My intent is to send a message that only through sustained progress on human rights will the U.S.-Vietnam partnership reach its full potential. I do want to say a further word about human rights and religious freedom. I mentioned that the picture is mixed. I meet regularly with a broad array of civil society activists, of religious believers, and other rights advocates in Vietnam. And what they tell me is that they themselves are very optimistic about Vietnam's future, including the development of civil society and increased respect for rights in Vietnam. And even though the trend lines, as I mentioned over the past 4 years, in many areas have been negative, and we must focus on those areas and we must hold Vietnam to account. The most sensitive activists in Vietnam tell me that we should be optimistic for the long-term trends, and we should also recognize some of the progress that is taking place in Vietnam. I'm honored that I get to meet with so many different Vietnamese people on a daily basis, and I too share that optimism. Think of the dynamism, energy, and skill of the Vietnamese people. You can't help but feel optimistic about their future. But I do want to again reassure you that human rights and religious freedom will remain central to our engagement. We are well aware of the challenges that are present in Vietnam today, and as I often share with my Vietnamese counterparts, the United States of America raises these issues, first and foremost because it's part of our DNA. It's who we are, it's what we believe. But secondly, we raise these issues because, as I said at the outset, we want to support the development of a strong, prosperous, and independent Vietnam. And I think all Americans will agree that the most successful countries, the most prosperous societies, the most stable countries in the world, they treat their people in a certain way. They respect the rights of their people in certain ways. And so we're going to continue to be very active in this area. But I just wanted to underscore that is why we raise these issues, and we'll continue to do so going forward. I'm optimistic because I mentioned that I've already witnessed the strength of the bonds between the United States and Vietnam. I've witnessed so many friendships of all generations between people of goodwill on both sides. I think that's what defines the U.S.-Vietnam partnership. I believe that in good faith and by working with the government and people of Vietnam, I think we can overcome these challenges. Now, there are many, many other areas of cooperation that are taking place between the United States and Vietnam, and I'd be happy to get into those in the question and answer session. The single largest team within the U.S. mission in Vietnam is our health team. We're very active right now responding to the COVID-19 and coronavirus situation. We have a large team that works on energy issues, on issues related to the environment, protection of the welfare of American citizens in Vietnam and the like. But today I wanted to give you an overview of some of what we're doing. Most of you I know are here today because you have deep and personal ties to Vietnam. I'm honored to be part of this town hall, along with your congressional representatives, to address your questions about the bilateral relationship in the region and other challenges that our two countries face. But my commitment to you is I'm here primarily to learn, to listen to you, and to learn how better, again, I can represent our country and your interests in Vietnam. Thank you so much for having me.
Good afternoon, President. My name is Vammeej Vaj from Vietnam. I live in as 10 years I live in the United States. I have some information to share with you and some questions asked you. We are known in Vietnam. Right now we have 1.5 million in Vietnam. We always support for the Vietnam government long time ago until 1989. At the moment, Christian, I listen from video broadcasting. That's why we had a lot of problem for the persecution of Christian persecution. And 2007, 2005, 2007, we live in North Vietnam. A lot of people destroy all the house and all the church, the Hmoob church. That's why we run a lot of people die in jail, the leader and the pastor, they put in jail, including my husband, in jail, 9 years in jail. We run to the South Vietnam, Central South Vietnam. Until right now, we have, I got the information, 101,000 family don't have the registration of household. Until right now, I don't have any paperwork with the family. I just use two violence, for example, one violence called 179 violence in Lang Dong, and 98 family. 23 years, they don't have any document, any registration in Vietnam. People, the children cannot go to school, they cannot open a bank account, and cannot apply any product used for the government. The second violation for background case of 178 family. It's 19 years old now, and they don't have anything to do with this violation. That's why I want to share this information with you. That's for the South Vietnam. And the second message is I want to share for the Hmoob in Thailand. We run to some Hmoob in Thailand, to refugee in Thailand. About 50 years now, some family to 50 years, 8 years, 9 years, 5 years, still not going to the third country, still living in Thailand. Very difficult for the refugee in Thailand. And the difficult thing last year I go to Burma because the Hmoob 2011, the Hmoob Indian Viet Phu, they had a situation to ask the government, because the government Vietnam take all the Hmoob land, destroy the Hmoob house, then together 2011, the government take a lot of people put in the jail, someone like in jail, that they run in jungle go to Burma, Myanmar. Now living in Myanmar, and last year I go visit Myanmar, 600 family living in the jungle, and they cannot survive anything. And put the children, the women in the jungle, and the men have to go to China to work in China to find food to support the women in the jungle. That's a very dangerous place. I just have some information to share with you. I have some of me here, I took my phone number, my email here. If you want to know more information, I can provide the information of the more situation here now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I can say that I have generally been aware of the challenges that the Hmoob community has faced in Vietnam. I've had the pleasure of meeting some members of that community in Vietnam, but I appreciate you for educating me further. I look forward to reading what you provided here today.
Ambassador thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I ask for your attention and advocacy for two groups of people. One is the Highlander Christian, and the others is political prisoner. I'm a mental health therapist. I'm a clinical social worker. And in late 2018, I was recruited by both people SOS through the local Vietnamese American mental health network to help them help the both people SOS legal team to help the refugees in Thailand, because many of them have heavy mental health issue and they don't know how to help. So I went to Thailand for 1 week. During that week, both people SOS arranged for me to meet about 500 refugees, most of them from the highland of Vietnam, Montana, and also all the Highlanders and the King people too. So among them was about 300 Hmoob and Montana, and others are Highlander Christian. I didn't know about them before. I went there to do mental health assessment and then to do the basic mental health training for the legal team, so they would be able to help these people out while they're waiting for their refugee status. The refugee mental health problem mostly include PTSD, major depressive disorder, anxiety, and so on, with the full range of symptom and behavior as the result of their trauma, such as being arrested, put in jail, tortured, and some of their family members was killed. Both people SOS report that they have documented like some 5,000 Hmong Christians rendered stateless because they have refused to renounce their faith per order of the local Vietnamese authorities in their home villas and in the northwestern highlands. They were evicted from their villas, and after years of wandering, many of them finally settled in the central highland. The government there refused to issue them household registration and citizenship ID, making them functionally stateless in their own country. They can't open a bank account or obtain legal employment, own a business, or even request a marriage certificate. Their children either did not get the birth certificate or they get listed as fatherless on their birth certificate. Many sub-communities have repeatedly petitioned to the government for remedies, but to no avail. A similar situation affected some of the 5,000 Montana Christians in the Central Highlands. So our recommendation, and I hope that we get support from you to get the Vietnam's Prime Minister issue instruction to the government authority in the Central Highlands to immediately issue household registration, citizenship ID, marriage certificate to all those affected. The Prime Minister should also issue instruction to the province in the northwestern highlands to immediately stop their policy to force Hmong Christians to renounce their faith, similarly to the Montana Christians in the Central Highlands. And I have a group of friends who work as independent news reporter that know about a dozen of political prisoners. They were captured and jailed during the 1980s. They were released about 20 years ago, but right now they fear that they will be rounded up again and put inside isolation, and it means that right now with the sensitive time, maybe they won't come back again. So please pay attention to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if you have any further information that you have with you that you can share with me or my colleague Alex, I'd love to take that on board and to see what kind of advocacy we can do for the communities that you've outlined. I did want to underscore, because I had mentioned earlier that, I had, for example, engaged with various Catholic communities across Vietnam. I did just want to emphasize what the U.S. government stands for is the religious freedom of all believers and all adherents to freely practice their faith and their beliefs, whatever they may be. So, for example, I've also had the pleasure of engaging broadly with the Buddhist community in Vietnam and the pleasure of meeting the Venerable Thich Quang Tho and Thich Nhat Hanh. I know that my colleagues, particularly in our consulate in Ho Chi Minh City, are aware of the challenges for island Christians that you had mentioned, and also for former political prisoners. But I appreciate your sharing further details about that. We'd be happy to advocate on those issues further, and if we have more information you can pass, that'd be great.
Thank you very much. I'll just add that members of the Vietnam Caucus are adopting prisoners of conscience, each one of us, to help advocate for freedom. And the Secretary of State has to personally meet with the chair and senior minority member of the House and Senate Judiciary Committee and Immigration Subcommittee. So once a year I meet with the Secretary of State. And I will say that when it was Secretary Kerry and Secretary Colin Powell, they were particularly concerned about the Montagnards because they knew those individuals personally from their service in the war. We have now virtually eliminated the refugee program, which is, I just think, an outrageous circumstance. So people who are waiting to be refugees to come to the United States will wait for the foreseeable future. There's no capacity given the current limit, which is unwarranted and, by the way, unprecedented. We've never had a limit this low. So I just wanted to say that's another thing. It's not the ambassador's bailiwick. It's something we need to deal with as Americans here. Thank you so much, all of you. And thank you, Mr. Ambassador and Congresswoman. And the sheriff was here a minute ago to give thanks to
Mr. Ambassador, can I?
Thank you.
How are you? Beautiful. I'm sorry. How are you? Thank you for your question. I'll be happy to take a picture. I hope I don't break your camera.
I try to get that video.
Yeah, that's so much How are you? Nice to see you. Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Great.